Hey, what's up, nerds? Wanted to do a little hobby vlog update. So, I've got a video that I started, well, I shot all of the stuff for it. I'm just not really good with stitching together a bunch of video. So that's sort of sitting in the can at the moment. But my recent hobby project has been this: transferring all of my GW paint pots into dropper bottles. Um, just in case that video does not ever make it to air, which it might not. Um, just out of sheer laziness, to be totally frank about that. Um, the whole process cost me about $30. That's for the dropper bottles, a huge bottle of medium, and a package of agitators. And I'm going to throw the Amazon links in the description for the items that I purchased for anybody else that wants to do that. Um, Now, what inspired me to do this? I'm going to take you on a little journey. 'Twas the night before Du Bois GT, and I was on my way there. I stopped to pick up Dez on the way, and while at his house packing stuff up, I realized that I had forgotten my prismatic palisade at home. Rather than turning around and going back and getting it, I just borrowed the one that Dez had. His was unpainted. So that means that late at night, once we finally got up to Rochester, New York, after a 5 hour drive, got into our hotel room. We both got to painting. Dez, because he wasn't actually done with his army yet, master of planning. Me, because I'm an idiot and I forgot my model at home. Um, so now this is a project that Dez has done a long time ago. He was the one that actually got me, the information on like what products to get and all of that, how to make it happen. And he also had a whole bunch of Vallejo paints in there as well. I'm just going to adjust my camera a little bit here. No, no, okay. So he had a bunch of Vallejo paints in there too, which a lot of like the Game Air and Model Air paints. Um, so I got an opportunity to use those as well as these GW paints that have been transferred to dropper bottles, which part of that process is adding more medium to them so that, like, especially like bases will flow better from the pot into the dropper. So it thins out all the paints when you do that. But it thins them out in a way that it doesn't really compromise the paint itself. It just makes it thinner. Um, Now, what I experienced in painting that one simple model for that tournament, totally by accident, was like I it was like being unplugged from the Matrix. I took the red pill. I jumped down the rabbit hole, opened Pandora's box, and now my hobby experience is completely different. I am noticing uh, major improvement in the quality of my painting already. And I just did this a few days ago. So this is the guy I've been working on. See if we can get a decent shot of him here. If I put my hand behind. Yep, there we go. Working on my Lord of Afflictions, trying to get him to a nice quality here. Um, Before this, he was already painted. I've had him around for a while, but he was really like his color was really flat, and using, the techniques that are a little bit easier with thinner paints and dropper bottles, um, it, it, it just really made it easier to up the quality of the paint job. And I had no idea um, of that was going to do that. I was really surprised at just how much better stuff is when you do that. So now I'm venturing down the great rabbit hole that is, the revelation that your tools really matter when it comes to painting. So I'm looking into picking up the Vallejo paints, um, the Model Air and Game Air paints to add to my paint collection. I am, uh, if you're going to start using paints like this, um, you're using much less paint and you're also doing a lot more work with like mixing paints. It makes it much easier to mix and like wet blend on your palette before putting stuff onto a model. And I'm quickly finding my regular palette not cutting it. So obvious next step is, well, now I have to make a wet palette. Like, duh. Obviously, I need to make a wet palette. Um, so, this one experience has led me down the road of, okay, I need to convert all of my paints to dropper bottles. I need to buy a whole new line of paints. I need to make a wet palette. I need to totally change the way I'm painting. And, well, if I'm going to be doing all this, well, then I should probably buy better brushes too, and then brush cleaner. And holy crap, officially, I'm like feeling like a real painter in the Warhammer hobby all of a sudden, which is really crazy. I never thought I would get this into painting, but now I'm looking at my armies and I'm like, I got to go through all this again, and I have to up the level of the paint jobs because I can do better, and I in the places that they're at are not like there's anything wrong with them. It's a good base to like build up the next thing that I'm doing. Um, so it's not like I'm really repainting anything. It's that I'm just taking the paint jobs that I already have and taking the next couple of steps after the things that I already did. Um, I'm finding myself already taking tremendously more time and care in what I'm painting. Um, because when you have thinner paints, you can do some much more delicate work, much finer work. Um, and I'm amazed. I'm blown away. I encourage everybody to um, really take the advice that people give out there. Um, I I was very resistant for a very long time. This is like my first breakdown of I've been hobbying wrong was adding zenithal highlighting. I've done a combination of rattle can zenithal highlighting, and I've done just dry brush, like directional dry brush zenithal highlighting. That made things a lot better. It was basically also how I did um, all of my malign sorcery endless spells was basically all with like a dry brush and wash techniques over zenithal. Um, that was like a really big window into that. Now I'm even getting further into, well, now I really like no longer want to paint over black. Like initially I had the thing that so many people do that like you prime in black and then you put base coats over that and then you work the colors from there. And now I'm like, well, if I zenithal highlight and make it more to the white gray end of the scale than the black end of the scale, I can just like put a thin layer of paint over what I'm working on, and all of a sudden, I just took a lot of time and effort out. Um, it's amazing. I did zenithal highlighting on like a sample unit of Nurgle Marauders that I've been working on, converting the old flagellant models. Well, not old flagellant models. The current plastic kit of flagellant models that I think have been around for a long time. But I thought they would make really cool Nurgle Marauders if I just did some head swaps, weapon swaps, arm swaps, give them, Nurgle icons and all of that. They were fairly easy conversions to do. Um, and I just like zenithal highlighted them and then just took like washes to the cloth. And it was like zip, 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 done. Like, model is almost done. I was astonished, amazed. I love how it looks. It came out fantastic. That's sort of like my side project. Like, I'm gonna do little bits of those guys at a time because I don't really currently have a need for Nurgle Marauders. I'm just kind of making them because I want to have them in my inventory of stuff. Um, but yeah, I've got some plans. I've got plans to build some Puscoils. I currently have two constructed. I have two more on the way from Mini Stomp. I also have a Magath Lord on the way from Mini Stomp, which I was surprised to find myself thinking I needed to buy one of those. Um, I will be having a video coming up on uh, the Magath Lords in general. I'll leave you in suspense as to which one I will be constructing out of that box. Um, for after I actually do that video with the comparison of the three, and that's by popular demand from the Maggotkin of Nurgle Facebook group, which I'll see if I can link that down below as well. Um, really good community of folks there devoted to the grandfather. Um, Other side note of hobby, um, I just want to point out, you know, in looking at this bad boy right here, when I first saw the model, I said to myself, it seems like this is going to be really awkward. This is going to have balance problems. This is going to really easily break, etc., etc., etc. There's also just like a lot of spindly crap on these guys. Not just this one, all of them. Um, and today, of course, as I predicted would eventually happen, I broke this guy right here. It didn't go completely off. I was able to lather on plastic glue and get it set back in place, and hopefully it'll be okay. Right now, he seems fairly stable. Um, I also have some ideas for this guy. I wanted to have him stand out a little bit from the Puscoils. So the thing that I decided to do was actually a head swap on the drone just to make him a little bit more unique. Now the socket compared to the plague drones is a little bit different, but I believe with some green stuff and some X-Acto knife work, that I can throw a face on this guy with a nice prehensile proboscis instead of just the regular old foul mouth parts, just to make him look a little bit more unique. And my breaking of this in the bottom, that was actually in trying to get that piece off. So until that those bits actually arrive in the mail, I think I'm just going to leave that alone Um, that whole bit is going to need to get worked with again. I've got to say, I'm a little bit annoyed with what GW has been doing with their models that are a little bit more, well, like this guy. It's like the flying models, like all of the stuff that, you know, a few years ago would have been on those like acrylic sticks that are now they're like modeling something that looks like it's hanging for them to connect to the ground. Um, they're all absurdly fragile. Like I just don't like how any of them turn out. The Puscoils are okay. Um, the the regular Puscoil that does not have the Dolores toxin, um, my warning to everyone would be make sure you're balancing and placing that correctly on the base so that he's not more wobbly than he needs to be. Um, but yeah, so more work yet to come on this guy. I will at some point be throwing some pictures up on the Maggot King group. And now that's like the other thing that I need to do is I feel like I need to actually start doing some good photography. So that means I guess I need to make a photo booth and do some photography that way. I feel like there was another thing that I like need to get or do at this point. Oh, airbrush. Airbrush. I actually own an airbrush. I think I broke it like the day I got it, and then it's just been sort of sitting since then, and I never really learned how to use it. Um, so I have a request in for Des to take a look at it and get get it working and teach me how to actually use it properly. Um, oh, excuse me, I haven't even been talking that long. Um, so yeah, it just basically out of this one little accident of I forgot a model at home and had to borrow somebody else's that was unpainted and then borrow their paints and brushes. I have just had this like mind explosion of um like all this shit that needs to change in my hobbying. I mean, I realize that like my paints are wrong, my brushes are wrong, my palette's wrong. I need an airbrush. I need to actually be able to take good pictures of these things to share them with people, and not just share them with people for like vanity's sake, but to like share pictures to people that I know that are much better painters than me. Uh, so that they can actually give me good feedback because I'm giving them a good picture. Um, all of those sorts of things. Um, but yeah, that's where Paul's at in Hobbyland right now. Is I got some work to do. I've got some things to buy. I've got a long buy list. Um, and I'm just going to throw this out there as well. I am working on slowly offloading my Stormcast. If there's any people out there interested in Stormcast, feel free to get in touch with me. I am happy to make deals with folks. Um, I've already gotten rid of all my sacrosanct stuff. Um, and I've gotten rid of my half of the like Stormcast, half of the Blight War box that I had. I still have a few long strikes, and other than that, it's all Warrior Chamber and Extremist Chamber stuff that's really left, and a few other random things like Gavriel Sureheart. Um, but yeah, definitely divesting out of the Stormcast army and really reinvesting it all in Nurgle right now is what it looks like. So that's, I think, about it. Um, it's a good time in the hobby for me. It's a good time. Anyway, kids, I will see you all later.